into our second patient of the day, and this is going to be a dual arch denture. So with the dual arch denture, what we have is we want to start by opening up our dental DB. So let's make sure that's open. Let's turn it on. If it's not, we accidentally closed it. And we want to start with a new case, brand new. So you'll hit brand new on the top left corner. And we also want to make sure our work parameter material configuration setting says Ivoclar. So once it says Ivoclar, we know we're on their material list setting. So let's go to demo case or default. This is going to be dual arch Dan. And I'm labeling him dual arch Dan and then our designer. So now let's click on tooth number 2 on our tooth numbering list. And we have removables and appliances. So let's click full denture, Ivoclar Ivotion. We want to do Ivotion monolithic for this workflow. And then you can change the shade if you would like. We do not have any teeth to extract. And we are designing the prosthesis with Ivotion in expert mode or wizard. Doesn't matter. It'll both export. So we'll hit OK. And we will have a upper plus lower arch denture, and that'll auto mark both arches. All right, so we'll hit save on that. Now that we hit save, we can go to open and explore, and our patients folder is now created, and we can paste the files in here and double check and ensure that they're matched. So let's minimize the DB and go to our course data folder and patient number 2, right? So patient number 2, your list might look like this. We have a couple photos to analyze, but we're going to change it to display information. Change this to sort by date, or you could sort by file type. So we just want our OBJ files right here. Okay, and I'm going to hit shift and grab all of our OBJs and hit copy. We have multiple ways we can copy, but I'm going to do right-click copy and then right-click paste. And now that I did that, we can go back to our database and check our files to ensure that they're aligned for us. So if we zoom in right here, I see a couple files. And it looks like we have 2 face scans and a bite block with a registration object to match these 2. So we're going to have to align them in ExoViewer. So in order to do that, what we'll do is launch ExoViewer. Once ExoViewer launches, you'll get this select objects to view. We can close that out, and we can simply drag and drop our files into ExoViewer. Awesome. Now, our files aren't showing color, and that could be because I didn't include this CR2 file. So if I were to import that CR2 file into here, we should receive a color on our OBJ, right? Now, if the color really matters to you, make sure to just import that from your Ivoclar patient folder. I also have data pre-aligned if you get a little lost in this process. So our tissue scans are already aligned in ExoViewer. I had them aligned for us prematurely to make our lives a little easier. But now I want to stitch together the face scans to this bite block. So I am hitting Control and middle scroll wheel to hide my mesh, but I'm holding Shift and Control to bring them back. So we can practice this together when we are in ExoViewer, but I want you guys to see it first. So out of these 2 face scans, we need to get to the fixed object, which is this bite block. With these 2 face scans, which do you guys think would have the most accurate alignment or stitching of our files to this mouth? Well, I believe this retracted would stitch to this bite block a lot better than this smile image where she has her lips closed. Why? Because this retracted has much more data for us to align to. So what I'm going to do is click on our floating mesh, and then I'll click on our fixed object, which is this mod record tray. Now you can print this STL from their website. It's free, and I'll include it in the folder just for you guys to have. So we have point 1 and then point 2. Now I just did these 2 dots. I could also include the inside of the mouth as well. So I'm going to do matching exclude selected parts because there's so much of this face I do not want to use in my alignment here. And I'm going to increase this radius until I start seeing everything that I want to align with. I want all the data from the bite block in the face scan as well as marked on our STL of our intraoral object. So now once I hit perform and then best fit matching, it's going to do a initial alignment and then a best fit match which perfects the alignment. Now once we did that, I have a nice stitching of triangles with this alignment. And I'm going to close out the brush tool widget that opened when we hit matching exclude selected parts. And I'm going to show the distances of this alignment. So this is a really good alignment with this record tray. Now, since we had a great alignment with that, this is now going to be my stitched object. And I'm going to use this bite fork as another alignment tool for this face scan to come to this face scan, because these 2 face scans will have more common features with each other than the bite block will have with this. So I always think of aligning in a sequential kind of step by step on where's going to get my best match. Okay, so match exclude selected parts. Let's do the same thing, increase our radius, and let's try and get a good stitching here. I want to not include these lips. I don't need the lips for include of our match. So I did this initial alignment. Let's check out the quality of that. Now I have a really good stitching on the fork, but anything beyond that isn't anything great. So I'm a little skeptical about that initial match here. So I'm going to also include the bridge of the nose to our alignment. Because when we think about the face and how much skin moves when you retract and change your facial features, the 2 things that stay constant should be the bridge of your nose. That would be one of the objects that are more closely hard stitched to your skull. Or you have your mouth, right? And that's attached to your maxilla. So I'm going to include this bridge of the nose, mark automatic, and maybe you want to grab some of the forehead just for safekeeping. I know she is kind of squinting her forehead there, so it's not going to help me that much, but this will put me in a safer place because I do have a decent match here and here. So I'm really liking this match a lot more. So I always include the bridge of the nose on when aligning face scans because I have a good match on this bite block. I also have a good match on the bridge of the nose. So I'm really happy with the quality of this match here. And let's compare that to the bite block. And wow, that's perfect. Look at it. That's better than the match from this to that. So that's how I tackle aligning and getting into it. But now we have to save these out, these face scans aligned. So we're going to go to right click, save scene as, OBJ, smile face scan aligned. And I'm going to go find that patient folder. Now, how do we find the patient folder? Go to your database, hit open explore, and let's copy Demo Dan's location, right? Go back to Exo Viewer, and we'll paste it in the line of code. So for smile face scan aligned, yes. So now that's matched and in our patient folder as an OBJ. I'm going to do the same thing for our retracted. So I'm going to save this retracted out, save scene as, OBJ. Aligned. Retracted aligned. So now that we have the smile and the retracted aligned, we can get into the design and have some fun with this. So let's minimize Exo Viewer and get into the design. Let's hit design. And that's going to launch the CAD software, the CAD. And it's asking upper jaw, load jaw scan. So through our list of files, we have our upper tissue scan. So we're going to import that. Next, lower jaw, load your jaw scan. We're going to import our lower tissue scan. Now our bite rim, we want to use that bite block. So always when you first start a case in Exocad, you have your scan data orientation. And we want to have our occlusal surface facing us when we start our initial design. And wizard mode is going to prompt us to go through model analysis right away. But first I want to add in our face scans. So I'm going to jump to expert mode, but we'll continue the rest of the workflow in wizard. So in expert mode, I just want to add the face scan. So to add the face scans, we have our tools over here. These are just our helpful tools. And we'll go to add remove mesh, and we'll change our drop down to face scan. So we have face scan. We're going to mark this as both jaws, but you can mark an upper face scan and a lower face scan, and that's how you include the jaw motion to your face scans moving with the jaw motion. So we can hit load, and we're going to import the face scan smile aligned, and then yes. So now that the smile is aligned, we can also import another one of the retracted aligned, just so we have both in our design. And now that we have both, let's just hit OK, and we edit mesh. We're going to right click on that object, and it's going to populate edit mesh. So now that we populated edit mesh, we can select only surface. And we're going to select around the mouth, and we can delete anything that is the inner lip, right? I don't want to do the outer lip, but just the inner lip. So select through allowed us to select all of our data, but be careful with select through. You can also select, say I'm cutting the nose. I can select also the hair. It's selecting through the entire selection. So I did have a photo inside of there on accident. So I'm going to delete all that. And we just have our trimmed face scan, right? And our trimmed face scans in orientation to our tissue scans as well as our bite rim, which is very awesome. So with this data, I do want to take this through the digital model room first. I see some of this flange could go against quote-unquote a digital model trimmer and clean up these borders. So we're going to right-click and edit mesh on these denture-based borders. So I'm going to go around and trim to the bottom of our U, or the deepest part of our vestibular data captured with this retracted tissue scan. Now once it's all trimmed up, we're going to go to our model creator. So we can create a model off of this. But I also want to trim the lower in case as well. If there's any extra data that might be unnecessary. I do see we're missing a lot of data on this flange, which happens. But this is our initial try-in records. And this is pretty standard type of records that we are receiving these days. So with this data, I want to go to model alignment, and we're going to activate our model creator. So model creator starts with model alignment. We have all these models we can make, but let's just focus on one model. We're going to do a plateless model. So plateless model allows us to just create 2 models, but as you can see, these models have a very large VDL here. She has opened up pretty well. So we have a lot of room on this case, which is not a bad thing to go through this design. So let's increase our model height and let's move that to the middle of this hamburger here. Now, if our models were hanging off or if they're crooked, that's how the models will generate. This is your bottom of your base in Model Creator. So we don't need such huge models, but we're not actually printing these. We're going to use these to basically extend our borders. So when we click on one jaw or the other jaw in expert mode, you're telling expert mode, hey, expert mode, I'm working on this arch. Or hey, expert mode, I'm working on this arch. So we want to do plateless model design, and we want to create that model. And once we create that model, it's going to digitally extend our borders naturally because it has to make a model down to that base. But it also gives us more data to work with at the same time, right? So I can smooth this border, and we can extend our flange a little bit further for the next wash record. So now that I've added that, we're going to add this model and create that. So now let's hit OK, and that'll conclude our model creator. Now, even though we made these models, how do I start designing with these models as my jaw scans? You see, your model is your green object up in your show hide window, but also your jaw scans are just tissue scans that are kind of not as good borders, right? So we made these models to use for our design. So because I want to use these models, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Tools, Add Remove Mesh, and this is how you replace jaw scans. So we're going to go to Extra Jaw Scan, and we're going to choose the arch you want to replace scans with on these models. So we're going to do both arches. We're going to click our upper, and then we're going to load up our lower jaw and import our lower model. Now that's an extra jaw scan. The extra jaw scan should be this blue color. Now once you added it as an extra jaw scan, it'll prompt you to hit scan alignment. Although these aren't in a different orientation, they're already aligned because they were our models that we just made. So with scan alignment, we're going to click that and we're going to hit OK and then replace. So now that we replaced it, we've easily turned our model into our jaw scan that we can work off of. And we're going to do the same thing with the lower jaw as well. Hit OK, and then replace. So now that we replaced it, we can edit these models and smooth these borders. Or in a model room world, we would call it 45ing these borders. So we're going to freeform these scan data and hit smooth. We're going to 45 these borders so that we have a nice border for our models. Extended at least too, because these are tissue scans. And with tissue scans, you need to analyze the data and see what was captured and what wasn't. And if it wasn't captured, then to communicate with the clinician about that data that you received. All right, that looks great for this model. Now we're going to turn on the lower arch, turn off that model, and we're going to smooth our jaw scan. So right click on that tan object and we're going to hit freeform scan data. And now we'll smooth this border as well. So we can extend that and we can work on more data here. Now communicate with the clinician and be like, hey, this is what I had to do to this case. Do you want me to proceed with something like that, or would you like me to be a little short? Now this data right here is a little bit double stitched, but we will kind of ignore that for now, and I'll clean it up for you guys right here, so you don't have to deal with that. But how would I deal with that? I would basically trim the data more. I do see this jaw scan beforehand. It had that double stitching. I'll clean that up. But we 45'd our borders. And now let's jump back into wizard mode. Okay, we're going to do our full model analysis and mark all of our features. Now, when we do model analysis, it's crucial that we're going to use our face scan, because our face scan has this story on our aesthetics, really. So, with model analysis, we have our occlusal plane. We're going to define that by 3 points. So, I'm going to find a point on that bite rim. Patient left, patient right, and then the center. And I'm going to hit apply. Now we get that occlusal plane, and now I can adjust this, turn on the face scan, and we can correct our plane of occlusion with face scan technology. Now I know some face scanners out there are pushing out some really decent scans for cheap, especially on the iPhones. We have the Bellis and then the Polycam. But then again, is very crucial to grab a really good retracted, and it's very technique sensitive. But I can only imagine through time we get better and better face scans. I know Exocad is also releasing a face scanning app, which should be really cool stuff that I'm very excited about. So I'm pretty happy with our occlusal plane here. If anything, I can scooch this down a little bit and this down a little bit. And now I'll hit OK, and then next. So now we have to mark our incisal papilla, and we can see our palatal suture, and then our papilla is right here. I'll mark it with 3 dots, and then we'll hit next. We have our maxillary tuberosity, and I'm going to mark that right there with 3 dots, right? Now we have our median plane, midline, and I'm also going to check this with our face scan. So now we have our face scan in here. I'm going to correct the midline slightly, but also keep in mind of our palatal suture plane, right? So I may just want to turn it. But I'm fairly happy with this patient's midline here. Bottom of the lip points, and that is a really good spot. Now we have our labial surface limit, and essentially that's where we want to get our vestibular distance, or as far as we want to take it to the position to the facial of the lip, right? So with our labial surface limit, we can pull this ring, and we can bring it to our most anterior point on where we want to extend this and push out the patient's lip. Now we want to look into the vestibule, and we want to come right out of it. That seems to always be a standard extension, but let's use all of our tools to confirm that with the case. So that's exactly where the bite rim is, which I'm hoping that we're placing the bite rim as far forward or lingual we want the setup. So our position of the lateral rugae, first rugae, we're going to mark right here and here. Left and right, patient left, patient right. Now our first bi area, patient left, patient right. And then our fold, left, right. And now our buccal frenums. We have one here and one here. And then our also premolar position on the lower arch. And now our lingual frenum. Retromolar pad on the lowers. We gotta mark 3 dots on each side. And then our median plane should replicate the maxillas. And now we have our ridge midline of where it is on the ridge. So I like this one right here. And then this labial surface limit, I'm going to bring that to about there. So with our alveolar ridgeline, it kind of marked it very nicely, and I'm happy with that. But with our molar points, we may have to adjust this and bring one side back a little further. Or if you have a denture to reference or any pre-op teeth that you want to reference, you would just move that dot over. We also have our second molar position. I think that's a little too far, so I'll bring it forward a little bit. And now the maxilla doing the same thing. But with this ridge, I'm moving it a lot more than that lower because it didn't turn out as nice. Now use your own judgment when you do these model analysis steps. Now once you're done, we have this correction area. We don't need to edit anything. I think it looks great. This is a preview just to see, make sure everything looks great on your dots that you marked. And now model analysis is complete. So we'll hit next, and our denture teeth are going to start to import. Okay, so I think that would also be a crucial time to turn on your face scan that we have cropped the inner mouth for. And we can auto select teeth for our patient. There's auto select here. Now we can go with round mold for her. We can go with a flat square mold. What I really enjoy doing, especially when having face scans, is flipping through our molds and finding the best mold for our patient. Now this is very predictable workflow when using face scan technology and smile creator technology. You're designing both these arches in occlusion just by simply changing the tooth mold, and this is why Ivoclar's tooth molds are very supreme tooth molds. Not many, there's no libraries that really turn out this nice upon immediate selection. So that's why I really love flipping through these molds and finding the perfect one for this person, because this is a lot of the work right here, is finding what looks good on this person. Now we can hide all of these extra tools that we have in our show hide window, but we can keep flipping through your molds, and these molds have different sizing and face bow width differences. So it's up to your discretion on what you select on these cases, but be conscious of your jaw scans and the positioning of everything previously when marking these dots and everything. So everything's going really great with this case, but I think these teeth are a little large. Did not fit her that well. Those round ones looked pretty great, honestly, but I do like these flat B27, 23s, B72s, B73s. They're very nice square molds, and then in the 80 ranges, we have these nice sharp square teeth as well. We have more flat edge case molds. Those are in the B80s. We also have the B71s, B62s. 62 has more rounded, but not as rounded as our S70s and our S70 and 80s. We can stick with the S70s and 80s. This should fit this patient. Let's do S81 maybe, but I am going to verify that it's on the ridge appropriately. So I'm going to look at how it loaded inside, because it did look great on the face, but I didn't think that buccal corridor was out far enough. So what I did is I went and switched the mold so that we can find the right mold for this patient. I do like this mold a lot, and if we need to, we can chain mode and pull that out further on that buccal corridor on that patient's left side. So I like where everything's at. Now we are in chain mode. So chain mode, typically you would have to spend a lot of time setting your midline and setting your plane of occlusion. Although we don't need to do that, because upon import of our tooth mold, we are able to just choose the mold and really try and focus on that. But if you need to correct your plane of occlusion here, you can use move all simultaneously, and this will move your ribbon and your tooth molds in the facial aspect, and it'll move everything all as one unit. And that's immensely helpful for when you're doing cases. I'm going to leave it as is because I do really like how everything turned out. And now I'm going to jump to this chain sneaky tab. In the chain sneaky tab, we have chain, single, and then also reset if we need to reset all of our doings in this tool. But we have posteriors. Posteriors, right now we have lock relation turned on. It's highlighted in orange. It means it's turned on. We also have opposite as pair. I really enjoy using opposite as pair. Why do I like opposite as pair? Well, once I click one of these dots, the opposing arch also mirrors that motion. Now, if I need to pull this buccal corridor out on this patient's left side, for example, especially down here, I'm going to go change my view to this posterior type view, and I'm going to grab this distal disc. Now, once I grab this distal disc, what it's going to do is move our upper and lower molds at the same time in that perfect class 1 occlusion type that was set when these teeth molds were scanned in and waxed. So I'm moving this buccal corridor out together, but that is scaling my teeth. And we have to think about our production blank ribbon, right? Now, if you do too much, your ribbon is going to become thrown off, and your interproximal gingival areas and your junctions are going to get thrown off as well. So whenever I do movements with this mold, I try and keep it very binary, or one of my steps previously may have been messed up. So I want to make my life easier in the future by thinking in advance when I do a step. So by moving that out, I've scooched that out a little bit. And then I'm looking at our setup here, and I do think that I should pull this more facially. So I'm going to go back to simple and bump our tooth mold out a little bit facially. Just like so. I want to reach this bite rim position, at least for this lower as well. So very good. We can turn on our face scan, check it out. I'm pretty happy with how this case is going. Let's go back to chain, verify everything. Opposite as pair, rotate to the back, move our distal disc, and anything that's white is going to be milled in white. Anything in the red will be gingival areas. So it's easier for you to tell where the ribbon's at. Now on this lower, my ribbon's getting a little thrown off. We're going to go to ribbon alignment and adjust that. But for now we have freeforming. Freeforming is what we can do to freeform our teeth or cut our occlusion. But I'm liking everything about this setup in comparison to our face scan. So we're going to go hit next. We're not going to cut our occlusion because I didn't see anything to cut, but if we did need to cut, well, we're going to cut our occlusion at 0. Now we're going to hit next. We have our denture base bottom. Now this is a tissue scan. So for tissue scans, we're going to mark this at 0. Negative angle of 10 is perfect. And we'll hit start. All right, perfect. Now next, we're going to do the design denture base bottom for the lower as well. Set and apply. Oh, I want to make sure to mark 0 for that, right? And then next. So now we're going to design our denture base top. I really like the ribbon location on this upper. So let's turn on our production blank for the maxilla. Double check that our lines are in between the interproximal, but we can adjust them in expert mode, which is cool. But for now, I'm just going to mark our borders of this denture. And you can turn on your jaw scan if this virtual wax up bottom or denture base bottom is a little difficult to view, because I do like looking at the jaw scans myself. The colors do get a little bit too much for me, and I do want to just look at one monochrome color sometimes when marking my denture border. So let's extend all of our data, and this is the spline. So once we get to our original dot, we will double click that. Now that looks like the frenum as well. And then our labial frenum. And now that we've marked everything, we're going to hit apply, and it's going to generate our virtual gingiva. Now this is the initial proposal of our gingiva, and we can adjust it for the future. Now if you don't like something, we can always go back, right? Or you can go right to expert mode. So what didn't I not like? I thought that this setup was a little bit too lingual. Now let's just go to expert mode and go to correct tooth placement. So I'm going to pull this a little more facial for myself with move all simultaneously. Bring it a little forward with this midline here. And I'm looking at it from this occlusal view, so it goes straight forward. And we'll hit OK. And then we'll go back to wizard mode. But I want to double check the ribbon on the lower. Do you see on the lower how this junction area is starting to come into the distal area of our canine? I want to adjust that. So how do we adjust the ribbon? We're going to right click on our background in expert mode, and we're going to get a bunch of tools. And denture production blank alignment is a tool that's going to populate. Now with this tool, you can adjust the ribbon location, which is crucial to when designing these cases. Is you want to be able to move this ribbon and this junction that is prefabricated, so we can see where it's going to end up before it gets manufactured, right? So I always look at it from the occlusal view, and I try and look directly down the puck so I can't see any edges or borders of the rest of the puck. And what this was is the distal was hanging over. So I'm going to take this and pull this whole ribbon binary lingual. One motion lingual. Just a little bit until I start seeing these lines meeting in the interproximal junction areas. Right? Now I'm really liking where everything's turning out. We're going to hit OK. And let's go back to wizard mode. And then next. We're going to hit apply on our border. Let's see how this turns out. Looks a lot better. Then we'll hit next. We're going to draw the borders of this denture base here. I'm going to turn on our lower jaw so I can see a little bit what we're doing. And this is part of our flange that is a little short. Now, by all means, these aren't the greatest records that I'm showing this on. I'm going to edit this for you, but these are cases that technicians see every day. And these are situations that we want to learn how to tackle. So since I made that model, I can extend this vestibule a little farther, which is helpful for the clinician when doing a border molding on that denture. So that's the perks of making models as well for our clinicians. So now we'll hit apply. It'll generate our border. And then next. So now that we have our denture base borders marked, we're going to go through and festoon the case, finish it up. I'm going to do quick festooning here because I have a festooning video. But this is an average festoon. But when we do the live demo and when I focus on the festooning portion, I have a video of the festooning technique. So we're just going to do the quick and dirty technique of the festooning. So I added all my thicknesses, made sure it wasn't too thin. And then our borders, they are going to be a little thin there. So our borders are free flowing, not like not like a different module like the night guard module. It has a fixed border upon generation. It's a similar tool though when drawing your borders. You have a margin and you draw that spline. But with denture base and denture module, this border is free flowing because we want you to be able to thicken up this border and have a free CAD experience with designing your denture base. You just want to be free when you're drawing this and get to the most extension that you want, right? And define the thickness of this roll, right? Kind of like I would traditionally as well in wax. We would define the thickness of the roll and get it to the deepest part of that model and then polish back afterwards. That's the quick festooning. You can also define the cervical as well, go around that. So I'm going to go to this pencil and go around and define the cervical. And when we have our color visualized bottom thickness off, it shows us the transition between the pink and the white. And that's so crucial when designing this because we don't want the white hanging through the buckle. Because if any white is showing, that's going to be milled in white. And that doesn't look that great. So we want to hit cut into production blank area, and that will cut our production blank. Although we cut it, I still see some speckle, and that will also be milled. So we have to go to add remove. We're going to turn our strength all the way down, and we got to hold shift to remove on our keyboard, and we're going to remove from the white buckle area that are showing through. To get a real defined denture after it comes out of the mill, our junction is going to be very defined and look very nice when you tackle the ribbon like so. Okay, so I'm really loving how that's going. Let's check on the lower. So I'm going to turn off all the uppers information, turn on all the lowers information, check that out, define the borders, check the thicknesses. Check the thicknesses, define the borders, festoon, and ribbon. That seemed to be my checkpoints when designing. Is check thicknesses, check border thicknesses, check ribbon, festoon, check ribbon. Checking ribbon and festooning kind of falls under one similar category. We want to thicken up this part of the denture base as well. It's a little thin right there upon generation. And if you need to extend the border, do that here, right? That's the best part in time to do it, is when you're going through these thoughts in your design, right? Is this an area I want to cover? It's great to do that in this aspect of the design. You can turn your jaw scan on if you want. You can remove from your frenum and then redefine the borders. Smooth, and then festoon. It starts with our initial lines right in the interproximal areas, which are your valleys. And then we do have peaks that we want to accentuate. As well as remove from this area as well. And then define the cervical. And if you need to undo, click undo, right? It's as simple as that. If you don't like one of your motions, just undo it. Try it again. You'll get it the second time, or at least the third time. So now that I'm liking where we're going, I'm going to cut into my blank. I'm going to smooth slightly. I smoothed a little bit aggressive there, so let's turn our strength down. And then let's cut into production blank again. And we're seeing some speckle white. So I'm going to turn our strength all the way down and remove from anywhere that I see any white on our junction. And that's huge to how everything post-processes. I found huge success with cases coming out like this, and we get really good photos right out of the mill with it. All right, I'm liking it. So now we're going to hit next, and next is going to adapt the teeth to the base. So once we adapt our teeth to the base, it's going to take our denture base bottom here. It's going to adapt it to our virtual gingiva, and we're going to get an adapted version of our dentures that we can throw on the printer or the mill. So now we are adapted. We can also freeform our adapted base and add in a retromolar pad back here, or redefine anything that has been adapted around our borders. We can thicken up our borders, make them more defined, and have a nice transition. We are in wizard mode, so it's prompting me to do model steps. I don't need to do anything with my model. And now in wizard mode, it's going to say, hey, we're finished. I mean, kind of, but I don't want to end the software. I do want to go to expert mode and complete with the freeform adapted and show the post dam again. So always go back in, freeform the adapted. Let's add to our denture base. And we're going to turn on the jaw scan a little bit. I don't want it too high up. I'm going to add, turn the strength down, turn the size down a little bit. Start at the palatal suture, find the hamular notches, and then we're going to swoop under. And draw our palatal suture. Draw our post dam right where the palatal suture is. I'm going to turn the color off so it helps me a little bit more. I can also use my model to help me as well. See how far I've gone. And we can also cut view and measure how much we've added to this post dam back here. So now that I've done that, I can go to cut view and I can measure how thick I've gone through. So I'm at about 0.4. That's not that bad right there. Maybe I need to change where I am at. So 1.5 is where I want to be. I want to be between 1 and 1.5. So I might just smooth this down a little more so I'm not too aggressive. We'll hit next on that. And we're going to merge and save. That's our final step with these cases. And we have a maxilla and mandibular denture here for our lovely patient. And she'll get this try-in in. Print this out of a monolithic try-in. And verify aesthetics and occlusion and fit. And then we can bring this onto the mill. I have many cases where we go right from try-in right to finish. But also there may be some adjustments in between, something like that. So now that it's complete, merge and save is going to be done. And we're going to save our scene. And we can take a look at where our files went. Our files in our Open Explorer. You can take your design and throw it onto the printer or the mill.